Sure, I'll go first.
Sure.
Hi, guys. Are we good? Hi, guys. Welcome to the Chelsea Skidmore Show. Today is a very special episode. It is a co-episode with my husband, Steven Randolph, for his podcast, So Deep. Our guest today is a very cool, and I still have to get the correct phrasing right, paranormal expert, ghost hunter.
That's fine. Paranormal investigator works. You know, I'm often called a paranormal expert, but I have to chuckle a bit because it's hard to be an expert about things that are unknown that nobody knows about. So, yeah, I guess I'm an expert in that regard.
I love it. So that's Joshua P. Warren.
Yeah.
And
Great. And I'm going to, little editor's note for Jonah. Hi, welcome to another episode of So Deep. This is a bonus episode with my wife, Chelsea Skidmore, and our guest, Joshua P. Warren, who is a paranormal expert, even though he doesn't like to say that, but he is pretty damn good at it. So this is a little bonus for you guys over at So Deep, and we will have our regular scheduled podcasts coming out Tuesday, but this is just extra for you. This was Chelsea's idea. She set it all up, and I'm like, yes, paranormal expert. We're in the basement of the Comedy Store, so buckle up and listen. Go on the ride with us. We're going to talk ghosts.
Joshua, thank you so much for coming today. You flew in from Vegas for this.
I came from Vegas. That's where I live now, and I was born and raised in the Blue Ridge Mountains, Asheville, North Carolina, but I do so much work out west. I found myself constantly going to L.A. or Vegas or Denver, and so now I have a home in Vegas and love it.
Was there something about Vegas particularly that was drawing you over there? Was it, was there like a specific energy where you found yourself working a lot? Did you just like it? Why Vegas?
Well, right now, Vegas is certainly becoming the centerpiece of the UFO disclosure that's happening. And, of course, Halloween time is a good time to talk about ghosts, but I study all kinds of strange phenomena, UFOs, cryptids, psychic activity, stories of interdimensionals, angels, demons, I mean, the whole nine yards. I spent 5 years living in Puerto Rico studying the Bermuda Triangle. And so I've traveled to Romania and investigated Vlad the Impaler's castles and the Tower of London and Mayan pyramids. And so I really like to diversify and explore a lot of things. And right now, some important developments are happening in the Vegas area with this UFO disclosure. And I really believe that in this information age, the cat is out of the bag, the genie's out of the bottle, and it's just going to keep coming forth more and more. And we're seeing a very critical moment occur here in human history where we have to acknowledge that, hey, folks, we really are not alone here.
We are not alone, James. We are
Joshua.
Not alone. Joshua, we are not.
Yeah.
We are not alone. So we have made contact. Is our government talking with extraterrestrials? Is that a fact? Can we say that?
I wouldn't say that as a fact, but I would say that they definitely are acknowledging that there is superior technology that has come from another highly advanced civilization. They have pieces of it that are being back engineered. And, Senator Harry Reid, who was the Senate Majority Leader, he's retired now. He wrote a letter to the Department of Defense that was recently released, in which he says, look, we have this exotic material, this exotic technology. He says it has huge implications for everything you can imagine, for weaponry, for communications, for transportation, and yet we found it, so that means it didn't come from us, but we don't want our adversaries to get it.
Being other countries?
Yeah, so that means it didn't come from them.
Was this Roswell, the pieces from Roswell?
He didn't state where these pieces were from in particular, but I think there have been a number of occasions in which pieces of debris have been collected.
So this isn't the famous Roswell case in the 40s or 50s, whenever that was, right? This wasn't that
No,
crash?
no, we're talking about something that happened 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And in 10 to 15 years, like, for example, the USS Nimitz encounter that everybody talks about, where these UFOs were seen flying around this Navy ship, that was in 2004. Mm-hmm. And this letter that Harry Reid wrote, I think it was in about 2008, so 10 or 11 years ago. And so this technology that they have collected is being back engineered mainly in Las Vegas. There is a man there named Robert Bigelow who owns Bigelow Aerospace. And Bigelow Aerospace has modified various buildings around Las Vegas where they are back engineering this stuff and trying to figure out how to reproduce it. And so far, they haven't had a lot of success. I'm losing my headphones here. I'll just put them on my neck. Weird thing to have a fedora and headphones. I'm breaking some new ground there.
Yeah.
So anyway, what we see here is a true admission where, for example, if you live in Las Vegas right now, you see Senator Harry Reid, who is from Nevada, go on the local news, and he's dying of cancer right now, and he's saying, look, we need to tell the people about this finally, and he's appealing to the Senate and others to say, I think the people need to know what's going on here.
What's really going on.
Yeah. And so all of this is very Vegas-centric, and a lot of the breaking stuff that's happening is coming from Vegas. Of course, there's all this excitement about Area 51. We know about the big event that just took place out there. And so,
or the event that was canceled.
Yeah,
according to Facebook.
That became very messy. That whole situation. Have either of you ever been to Area 51?
I always wanted to.
We have not, but we would like to go.
I knew that was going to be a disaster because, for one thing, okay, when you drive to Area 51 from Vegas, it takes you over 2 hours just to get near the base, and I mean there is practically nothing for 2 hours. I passed a gas station that said next gas station 73 miles, okay? And you don't have a cell phone signal.
Wow.
If you break down on the side of the road,
that's the scariest part for me, for this guy.
Yeah, you're at the mercy of whatever weirdo might come along if you break down on the side of the road and you can't fix your own car. And so when you finally get out there, I mean, the closest town is the town of Rachel. I think maybe 50 people live there. There's no gas station there. There's a little restaurant, and there's just no infrastructure to support some type of a giant festival. And so, that started as a joke. But then I think the people who saw an opportunity to make some money, they said, well, let's just jump on this and capitalize. And then they went out and started doing the homework to realize, like, there's no way we could pull this off with what's out there.
What date was it supposed to be?
September 20th.
And did it happen?
Well, they took the original concept of the event, and they decided instead to transfer that to a venue in Las Vegas, like a concert or whatever.
Not the same.
But the excitement over this caused other sort of smaller events to pop up around the area, around the periphery of Area 51. So there were altogether, they say, about 3,000 people that were sort of strewn around that region, who got out there and had their own fun, but not some kind of a centralized storming of the gates. That's not going to work anyway.
What I thought it was it was a Facebook event that someone created as a joke, and then over 1 million people, or was it 3 million people or something, checked off going. And then the government got a knowledge of this, which is so funny because it's a Facebook event, and started freaking out and said, don't come here, you will be killed. That's the story that I heard.
Well, here's really, because, I have actually done a lot of research in the area, as you know, and I know a lot of people both sort of inside and outside of the military there. And here's really the timeline. So this young man who's 21 or 22 years old named Matty Roberts, who lives in California, he put this out there as a joke.
In his parents' house, you know what I mean?
Yeah. He put it out there on Facebook as a joke. Millions of people, well, as you said, they said, oh, yeah, sign me up. I'm going to do it. He got media attention because of this. At that point, it is my understanding that other promoters said, hey, kid, we think you're onto something, And so they kind of teamed up and said, let's just jump the gun and create this huge event that maybe it could be like Burning Man, And then so they started advertising something that didn't exist, and then they went out there and they realized that this is not feasible. The FBI did take an interest in what he was doing and visited him and talked to him about it, but the reality is the government has no reason to fear something like this from a security standpoint, and here's why. Even if you go down the long driveway at Area 51, so to speak, and it's really called the Groom Lake facility. If you go down that driveway and there's a big old gate there and you make it past that gate somehow, then you've got over 20 miles of very rugged terrain, cliffs and all these sheer rock faces. You've got rattlesnakes and coyotes and who knows what else. And then if you actually made it over the mountains and through all that and through their various fences and barricades and you got to the base, what you would find would be some big runways and some large, very well-secured buildings. And if you were somehow able to make it into one of those buildings, well, now all you're going to find are some big elevators. And if you can punch in your code or have your thumb scanned or whatever and get on the elevator, then you would go down underground where the doors will open, you come out, and now you're in the actual base.
How far
Wow.
underground in these elevators?
I don't think anybody has ever actually known, like, nobody who could say.
Has leaked that information.
Yeah, nobody's leaked that. There's a lot of information about Area 51 that's never been officially put out there. They just recently acknowledged its existence. And what's
What do
funny,
they call it?
Well,
government?
they call it the Groom Lake facility or the Nevada test range.
Where they do what? What is their official kind of public
Yeah.
statement?
They say that they officially work on classified projects related to aeronautics. And also, you have to consider that, okay, that airspace over Area 51 is restricted, of course. You can't fly a plane over there if you're a commercial pilot, and which is really even eerier because when you're out there late at night in the desert by yourself, it's so quiet that you can hear your blood rushing through your veins.
Whoa.
Wow.
Literal. And so my point is, though, I've talked to private pilots who have accidentally gotten too close to that restricted airspace, and the tower says, you've got to turn around, you're in restricted airspace, and the tower identifies itself as Dreamland. That's what they call themselves.
And that's exactly where they'll put you if you don't listen.
Yeah, Dreamland. And one more thing I'll point out that you might find interesting, and this is an absolute fact. I live very close to the McCarran Airport there in Las Vegas. Every day, over 1,000 people go to a top secret section, a classified, security section of the McCarran Airport, and they get on this airline known only as the Janet airline at the Janet terminals. These planes are white. They can only be identified by a single red stripe down the side. They get flown to Area 51 in the morning to work, and they get flown back about 6:30 in the evening every single
Wow.
Have you sat at the airport
Yeah.
and
And
noticed
watched?
this?
day. You can see it. If you want to see it, I've got their schedule down pat. I can tell you
No,
where to
but-
go. And
Have you personally sat down and you're like, I'm going to watch this and see when they come back and get a little more?
Yeah.
Have you followed any of the people once they've got off? Okay.
no. I don't want to badger the government. You know.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it is
I love that
interesting.
you know all this. Do you have an insider tip?
I do have some insider tips. Yeah.
How do you coax the info? How did you develop the relationship with these insider people?
Well, I've been doing this type of research for 27 years. I've been self-employed since I was 18 years old, and I've built up a reputation as being someone who is trustworthy, because I deal with people all the time who tell me about sort of sensitive subjects. People, they get a little sensitive when it comes to paranormal stuff, especially if you're talking about some kind of a murder situation or a suicide. I own a bunch of ghost tours, for example, and we have to be careful that we don't tell a ghost story about some kind of recent tragedy, because that would just be tasteless and insensitive, right? And so the reason people are comfortable talking to me is that I have a reputation for being somebody who understands your privacy and respects confidence, and I never betray that. And so over time, people who know this kind of amazing stuff that has to be kept secret, they want to talk about it.
Of course.
And I'm one of the few people that some can talk to about, and I'm not just talking about some wacko at the bar or whatever. I mean, I'm talking about military people and scientists at universities and people who would never come out and publicly even say that they have a great friendship with me, but they do, and they tell me these things.
Has any of these insiders at Area 51 told you any other information about what they're doing or what they have seen?
Well, the people that I have talked to in person, of course, have said that they don't know if there are any bodies there, but they definitely have got basically flying saucers. Is it's like it's as cliched as that term is. They are actually kind of like big metal saucer shaped things. They're small, like kid sized, usually, not always. And when you go inside them, everything is sort of constructed from one shaped piece of material. So it's not like, for example, here in this studio, we have 20 different components around. You got your microphone, your headphones, and there's a camera there. Everything is sort of constructed as one uniform piece, and they place their hands on these panels, and that's how they're able to control it directly by transferring thought through the hands.
Whoa.
But now, of course, there is the famous Bob Lazar, the notorious Bob Lazar, some would say, and he claims that that he has actually seen some bodies there, like alien bodies. So.
What do they look like, Bob?
So he says that, Bob Lazar, he actually, to be accurate, he says he's not 100% sure if what he saw was a dummy or a real body, because it appeared lifeless. But he said, it just looked like a maybe 3.5 foot tall or being lying naked on a table, and that I think he said that the skin was maybe a little slightly greenish, but he only got a glimpse of that. He said he was walking past the doorway. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was in the department where they were trying to figure out how to back engineer this particular engine, and this was an engine that was about the size of a basketball. And he said that it had this sort of a force field around it. If you would throw like a baseball at it, the baseball would bounce about 6 inches from the device. Wow. But he said one of the weirdest things is that if you move like a candle flame close to it, the flame would reach a point where it would freeze. So it was almost like it was stopping time. And so if indeed this is a technology that's manipulating gravity, then that means it's manipulating space-time. And so that's why when we ask this question of like, where are these other beings from? I'm not sure if we could wrap our minds around the answer to that, because they might not just be from another rock out there. They might be from another reality, another dimension, and we're not capable of comprehending where they're from. They're just from elsewhere.
Ooh.
We are not alone, Chelsea.
And you believe, obviously, in UFOs.
Yeah, I've seen so much myself.
Really?
I mean, yeah.
What have you seen?
So I was, this was a little over 10 years ago, the first time I had like a really major sighting. I was in Laughlin, Nevada. And
isn't that where, oh, never mind. I was thinking about, what's that place in Virginia people are always writing about in movies? It starts with an L too.
Oh, yeah, where the CIA is.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, but Laughlin sounds familiar.
Yeah, well, Laughlin is about an hour and a half south of Las Vegas.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of desert around it. And this was February 10 years ago. And I was in the desert one night about 9 p.m. with 3 other guys, and we all had third-generation night vision goggles. Have either of you ever used third-gen night vision goggles?
No.
These goggles are military grade, and that means that even though you can buy them now as a civilian, it is illegal for you to take them out of the country. You cannot, like, for example, I got invited one time to be a presenter on a cruise ship that was going to go to Mexico and some other places, and they said it's a federal offense to take those goggles on that cruise ship, because it's good to get these goggles and go look at the sky at night. Because when you look at the sky with these goggles on a clear night, every star that you can see with your naked eye, imagine seeing 25 or 30 stars for every one star you can see with the naked eye. So when you look up there, the heavens just explode. It's almost like there is this shell of diamonds just sparkling all
Sounds
around
beautiful.
you. It's unbelievable.
Can you buy these goggles off Amazon?
Probably they
Third
cost
generation.
nowadays. You can get a pair for about $2,500.
Wow.
And and that's that's reasonable.
I'd rather just go to Europe.
Para. Can I give out a website actually? Where you can
Absolutely.
Paratemporal.com is a website where I actually do have an interest in that, but.
Can you hear him in your headphones?
Paratempora.
Can you hear him in
Yeah.
your I can't hear anybody in my headphones.
Oh.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me on the mic
Yeah, I
in your
can hear
headphones?
you.
Yeah, my headphones just
You
went
might
out.
have just unplugged them.
Okay.
I think it means your mic is still okay. If the headphones just, you might have just kicked the wire out. Oh. Does it not?
There we go.
It's good?
It's back. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please continue.
So
Yes.
yeah, you can see some of this footage and that sort of thing if you go to paratemporal.com. So anyway, I was out there in the desert with 4 guys. We had 3 pairs of these 3rd generation night vision goggles. This was the first time I had ever used them. And of course now I own my own. But so here I was looking up at the sky, amazed, it's just mesmerized by just the sky itself. And all of a sudden I saw something that was so weird, I thought that my goggles were screwing up. Because when you look through the goggles, it's green, and there is an electronic circuit there. So I thought maybe because I'm seeing what looks like this gigantic V shape, almost like I thought it was a big digital artifact. Because I'd put my goggles down, I didn't see it. Lift them up, there's this huge V shape. I said to the other guys, I think my goggles might be messing up. And then I hear this chorus of holy, because they all turn and now we're all seeing it. And that's when we realize there is this, I'm talking, it's the biggest thing I've ever seen in my life. A gargantuan V-shaped craft, silently moving from east to west, from my point of view, from right to left. And it was absolutely silent. There was no indication of any kind of propulsion or anything like that. And it wasn't a triangle. A lot of people think about triangles. I could see the stars in the middle of it. It was a V shape. At least that's how it looked to me. So as it went over, there was a moment when it was right over our heads, and I have never felt smaller and more insignificant in my entire life. I've only had a couple of occasions in my life where I say I feel like a caveman looking at fire for the first time, and it was so eerie. And this thing, it passed. It took it probably maybe 2 minutes. It was a long time. Passed from right to left, and then it just drifted on off over the horizon. And we stayed up the rest of the night in my room talking about this over and over and over and over, trying to, just like the adrenaline would not stop. The next morning, I called everybody in the area. I called the airport and the Air Force Base and the Wildlife Commission, and nobody had any explanation that they would give me for what we had seen that night. And at that point, I said, okay, I can't tell you for sure that came from another planet or whatever, but that whatever that was, it doesn't feel man-made to any of us, and it doesn't seem to be a technology that we're familiar with. And so since then, I've seen many other strange things, but that one really stands out because it was just so big.
Wow.
I have a story if I can share,
Yes.
and just if maybe you could break it down or give me some more insight onto what I saw. So I've been into UFOs for a very long time. Is it still working? Okay. So I've been into UFOs. I know about the black helicopters, all this stuff, just from reading and watching all the TV shows and stuff. But about 10 years ago, I would say 2009, I was outside of a friend's house. It was dusk, and in Hollywood, right on Melrose, like by Pink's Hot Dogs, and on Melrose and La Brea, center of the city, busy time, summertime, and everybody was smoking a cigarette outside this meeting at this house. There's 5 guys. Everybody there's sober, not partying or anything. And I'm actually peeing against the wall. And it's kind of gross, but I was just like, there's an alley kind of by Pink's, and I was peeing. And it's a weird feeling to look up, and I looked up, and I was like, It was just starting to get dark, and I was like, that's a weird star. Then the star started moving very strangely. And I look back, and all the guys who are probably 50 feet back are all smoking cigarettes, mesmerized, staring up. And I was like, this is kind of scary. And so I stopped peeing, and I ran back to the group of guys, and I was like, what is that? And they're like, well, look at that one. Look at that one over there. So there was there's 3 of these little balls, right, that looked like stars. And I was like, it could have been a plane. If they weren't making strange movements, it looked like a plane that you could barely see. And then they were locking into a triangle formation. So it would be a boom, boom, boom. And so they would come together, lock, and stay as a rotating triangle. And then every once in a while scatter and then kind of like do their own dance and then come back. And we're all looking. And my friend actually got it on video on his phone. And I'm like, is everybody seeing this? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, that is a UFO. And we're like, we don't know what that is. So they finally, I would say it was maybe a minute, 59 seconds, which is a long time when you said 2 minutes. That's a long time when you're like, don't know what's going on. So it was like a minute and a half. They all just scattered one by one. I think it went like boom, boom, and then just went into hyperspace and took off so fast. So I looked at my buddy at the time, and I think I was the one that was most into UFOs of the group. And I said, well, no, this is a real UFO if the black helicopters come. And my friends all go, okay. I said, okay, every report I say there's black helicopters that come. We're in Hollywood, middle of Hollywood, Pink's Hot Dogs, like the touristy part. No shit, a minute later, huge, it was like the movie Terminator or something. Black helicopters started combing over us. And then, like, where this was in the sky, like, I would say it was a mile away down below, started combing everywhere that they had been. Black helicopter looked like we were in war in the Middle East. These were military, huge fucking black helicopters with no marking. And I told my buddy, I go, they're the black helicopter. He goes, oh, my God. I go, I watch all these UFO shows. Black helicopters always follow this. And I'm like, am I going crazy? And they're like, no. And so these military helicopters hung out for 45 seconds, scanned everything, and just fucking took off.
Yep.
So what the hell did I see?
That story has so many of the earmarks of legitimate UFO activity. It really does. And
I love the fact that it wasn't like I was stoned or we were on acid. I mean, just guys hanging out at dusk. It was...
You know what? There is a man named Steve Barone who lives in Las Vegas, and for those who aren't familiar with the area, there are extremely tall mountains on either side of Vegas. Vegas is a valley. You have mountains that are up to 12,000 feet tall that are right next to it. And Steve Barone lives on the edge of one of these mountains. It's called the Red Rock Canyon area. And so he has this tremendous view of the entire Las Vegas Valley from his deck. And he started seeing UFOs, and so he began going out. He's retired now, and so he started going out every night, setting up various cameras on his deck.
That's fun.
And recording what was happening. And he got very, very good at differentiating between normal things and paranormal things. Because he could tell the difference between an airplane or a drone or a helicopter. And as a matter of fact, one of my good friends is Murray the Magician, who has a show there on the Strip at the Tropicana. And Murray and I went to his house with a television crew to test Steve and to see if Murray could fool him, being a magician, And so Murray was sending up drones and with all these weird lights and Chinese lanterns, and et cetera. And we could never stump Steve. Steve has hours and hours and hours of remarkable footage. He has a YouTube channel called UFOs Over Vegas. And in many of his videos, you see something almost exactly like what you described. And often they are seen near Area 51 and in that range north of Vegas. Basically, like you said, you often have these multiple lights that at first can seem like they're sort of unarranged and chaotic. And then they kind of come together and they form an amazingly fixed sort of arrangement for a while. Like if you just saw that part of it, you would maybe mistake this as being one cohesive
That's exactly
ship.
True. Yeah.
But then they scatter and they mix up again, and then, like you said, they do that every single time.
Yeah.
And frequently, indeed, you have the black helicopters. In fact, when I was in Puerto Rico, that was very common. I even have some video footage of one of these UFOs flying and a helicopter right next to it.
You have the footage that you shot?
Yeah.
And I don't, and I, if you've seen enough of these videos, you go, okay, this happens and then this happens. And I jokingly said, well, no, this was real if the black helicopters. And it wasn't like some police helicopter flew over. These were, I felt like, oh man, if we were at war, these are the kind that would wipe you out. These are big, huge, out of nowhere. It was like something above, it was military stuff.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't know if that was I was like, is that supernatural or a UFO from out of this world? And then is that our government going, hey, another one came, let's figure out what's going on? It was strange.
Yeah, well, and of course, that doesn't always happen. The government doesn't always know these things are out there. And actually, one of the reasons that...
Who are the black helicopters?
Well, there are, and of course, nobody can really say for sure, because when I was in Puerto Rico, for example, there were plenty of occasions. In Puerto Rico, it's a part of the United States. The people there are U.S. citizens, but because it's not a state, then the government can experiment with a lot of stuff down there, and they don't have to take responsibility for it because the laws are very ambiguous. And they've gone down there and done all kinds of amazing biological experiments on humans and animals. As a matter of fact,
is that why the baseball players are so good from Puerto Rico? Maybe something in the water and just making them great.
Some have said the chupacabra might be the result of an experiment because they actually brought a bunch of monkeys there to Puerto Rico and injected them with all kinds of diseases and did experiments with them, and some of them mutated and escaped from this island.
That's true.
That's true.
Wow.
Is that the island of Dr. Monroe?
It sounds similar, doesn't
what
it?
Is
to
it?
Monroe.
It's a movie.
I want to see
Marlon Brando, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the
wow, I
island
want
of
to see
Dr.
that.
Monroe. And so, but these monkeys, they escaped, and
Smart,
now they roam the island as pests, and they've been a big problem. But anyway,
wow.
The reason I bring this up is I have talked to police officers over and over in Puerto Rico who have told me that right after some kind of a major UFO incident happens, and it's a big hot spot down there, also for USOs, which are things that go in and out of the water.
I'm obsessed with that, too.
Yeah. That right after something like that happens, then, of course, you have your first responders who get there if there's some kind of a crash. That for all they know, there's been an airplane crash. They don't know what they're dealing with. And suddenly their superiors say, okay, guys, get out of there, stand down. There is another crew that's coming in to handle this.
A little out of your pay grade.
Yeah, and there is a group of guys who show up, and they're dressed just like military guys. They're either in camo or they're in all black. They got like SWAT type gear, and they don't have any emblems. They don't have any badges. They don't have anything to distinguish who they are with, and yet they come in and they have authority over everybody. And this sort of thing happens here in the States as well. I just heard about it even more in Puerto Rico because in Puerto Rico there's so much activity condensed into a small space. So there is obviously some branch of the government that is not officially on the books. And
Wow.
and there is this huge black budget. We all know about the black budget. I mean,
We don't.
Oh, really?
Not down here.
Every single year when the United States passes its budget, there is a gigantic chunk they call the black budget. I forget how much it is. It changes from year to year. But it is a huge amount of money that is signed by the government for secret projects, and they don't have to say what it is at all. There's there's no accountability for how this money is spent. So obviously it's going to some section of the government somewhere, but that is not an officially publicly acknowledged section of the government.
Wow.
So that's possibly who these black helicopters are with.
Yeah.
But one thing that the government's good at in terms of keeping secrets is they try not to give things a name.
Oh.
Because if you give things a name,
Then you can identify it.
it's easy for people to communicate about it, right?
Like that's that same blank. That's yeah. But if it's just like these black
What do they
helicopters, what
refer
is that?
to?
They give them numbers. Numbers are harder to remember. You know?
Like, oh, that's 67457.
Exactly.
And it's like, great. Okay.
And that sounds much less sinister than saying, "Oh, this is the Dreamland post."
It's less
over here."
emotional.
Yeah.
Great, Chelsea.
Yeah.
Can I share something else? You were talking about the out of the water.
Yeah.
So in San Diego, California, I don't know if you're familiar with like our coastline.
Mm-hmm.
My buddy started a restaurant in North County, San Diego, which is Encinitas, which I deem as heaven on earth. It's the most beautiful strip. It's about an hour, 45 minutes south of San Clemente. So it's not far from here. At night, you can get there in an hour and 20 minutes. So San Diego's big. It goes all the way down to Mexico. But the tip of San Diego, it's only about an hour and 20 minutes from here, from Los Angeles with no traffic. So this little community, there's like Carlsbad, and there's all these little towns. There's a self-realization center. Famous book called Autobiography of a Yogi was written. The guy who brought yoga over to the United States, right? And so when I first got sober, I was just drawn to this area, and it was just a magnetic coastline.
Energy vortex.
I later learned I didn't know, so I was just drawn to this area. I'd go down there like a couple times a week, and this old Indian man, like from India, with like jewels all over, came up and he goes, "You feel it, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Yeah, there's an energy vortex in the kelp beds out there." I later read this book, Autobiography of a Yogi. He came from India, was drawn to this area, said it was a very magic area. So my friend has a restaurant perched right on the coast right there. So he's into it too. He's like, "Yeah, there's an energy field out there." It was kind of cool. I felt it. It was a very positive thing. He had a restaurant right there on the ocean. It was these people that would come in were so noticeable. We would all, I helped them with this restaurant. So I worked there, helped them start this restaurant. And there was like 5 of us guys. It was a really fun time in my life. We were all working at this restaurant. Slowly but surely, it's not one of us, not 2 of us. All of us were like, there's some weird people that are coming to these restaurants, to our restaurant. They almost weren't human.
What?
They weren't. Did I ever tell you about this? We talked about it the other day because he goes, "Oh, the aliens that would come." So it was a hot. He said that at night stuff would come out of the water. Cool, right? We were kind of like into this stuff too, so we could just kind of have our imaginations run wild. But he was like, "No, stuff comes out of this water." And a lot of the guys who'd lived and surfed there for years, like, "Yeah, there's a lot of activity that come in and out of this water." There was a certain. I saw it 5 or 6 times. Every one of us had experiences working at this restaurant. People would come in and they would have a blank look in their eyes. A lot of couples. There were couples. So you would think at first, oh, this is a German couple, German tourists who don't speak English. But they spoke English perfectly, but it was almost like their iPhone hadn't got the latest update. They weren't human, and they were trying to figure out how to have a human experience. I've never experienced this outside of this. They would go, "I'd like a taco." And people, we would go, "Okay," and just maybe this guy's handicapped or there's something wrong with him. My wife here would like one of your tacos in a Coca-Cola, and you would sit there and you'd think you're being pranked, and you'd go, "Okay, 1 taco and Coca-Cola," but it would be like if we wrote an 80s movie and an alien was trying to figure out how to be human. So it was enough to where you go, "Okay," and then these people would be eating their tacos, and then they had a camping store because there's a little camping site attached to their building. His wife had the camping store. "I would like to go camping." And so we would go, "Hey, man, there's some weird people. It's almost like they're aliens. They're trying to figure out." And my friend, we all had the same experiences throughout the day working these shifts at this restaurant. So that was commonly happening. Do you have anything on that? It was literally like people didn't know how to be human, but they looked human, but they were like, "We would like to try a Hershey bar." And we'd be like, "1 Hershey bar coming up." They'd be like, "Wow, thank you." And I just, they weren't foreigners.
Yeah.
They understood English, but they didn't, they were just, it was like, oh, and he goes, "I bet you this is some kind of port or something." Like, I don't know.
Well, in 1967, when the Mothman flap occurred in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, when people were seeing this 7-foot-tall, dark, winged thing with red eyes flying around and scaring the hell out of everybody for a year, leading up to, by the way, the collapse of the Silver Bridge near Christmas, which was the largest bridge disaster in the history of the United States. 40-some people died. So a lot of people thought Mothman was a harbinger. But during that period of time, there was a lot of strange phenomena happening around Point Pleasant. In addition to that, poltergeist activity, UFO sightings, and men in black, so to speak, looking very similar perhaps to how I look today.
Yeah.
Were showing up in town, and this is a small town, West Virginia, 1967. They were showing up, and they would be very awkward and look at people with this kind of distant gaze.
That's exactly what it was.
And they would go into the diner, and there was one occasion where an author named John Keel was in a diner. He was studying what was happening there, and he saw one of these guys, and the guy sat down and very weirdly ordered some Jell-O.
Yeah.
And so they brought him out his Jell-O, and he took out a straw, and he's trying to drink the Jell-O through a straw.
Like he didn't know.
He didn't know how to.
That's exactly what these people, they were couldn't figure out. It was strange.
Yeah.
I witnessed it.
So so
Weird.
this and I've had people talk about, like, for example, in the Bermuda Triangle, a lot of the sort of odd people like this, they have little ears. I keep hearing, like,
Reptilian.
physically they have very small ears.
Chelsea.
So yeah, I mean, you have to consider that we humans, we go out there and we disguise ourselves so that we can get close to other animals. I mean, look at hunters. They go out there and they put on all kinds of camouflage, and they use duck calls. And I've even seen photographers go out there and dress up like a deer, just so
Or like a bush.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like, we do that so that we get access to other species. So
Information.
If we are the inferior species and we're being observed, and this is just a big petri dish, then it would make sense that in some cases these aliens, which have such advanced technology, would be able to put on some kind of a disguise to get by most of the time. And it's also interesting to think that those who say we might actually be preyed upon, that we might be a food source or something like that, that sounds kind of outrageous, but think about the fact that there's probably not one single cow on planet Earth that knows people eat cows.
Oh.
So why should we be so arrogant and egocentric as to think that we would know if we actually were being sort of bred
Farmed.
here? Yeah, farmed, bred for some other purpose by
Wow.
a greater species.
It's an
Yeah, a cow will
interesting
come up to you
thought.
and lick you. It doesn't know that there's factory. Oh, strange. That is a strange thought.
So I think that, like, when you start looking for this kind of stuff, like, I think there's people who have the awareness of all of this stuff, UFOs, ghosts, all of this kind of other worldly stuff. People who obviously don't know anything at all, the ignorant people, the happy, normal people, and then probably like the in-between, half in, half out. Would you say that's like the
Yeah, that
sort
works.
of breakdown?
That works. What are you, Chelsea?
I think I'm a believer without enough information, but I'm open to it, and I'm available.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm interested and I'm curious.
Yeah.
But I'm not a disbeliever. Like, I'm into it, but I don't consume it a lot because it's scary to me.
It's fun.
But, like, I know my husband is. Part of the reason I asked him to come today is because I was too scared alone.
I love
I
this stuff.
I get scared, the more I open up to hear this
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Because you feel powerless, right? Because you're like,
Well, here's what it is. I feel like, and do you agree that once you're available to this, energetically stuff comes in? Because one time I was like watching something about an alien documentary or something, and Steven said, when you start opening that portal up,
yeah, like when you start thinking about it, for me, when I start watching a lot of alien videos on YouTube, right, I will have aliens in my dreams, and it's not just, oh, you're thinking about, it's almost like the thought and the focus is the golden door opening, where I'm like, talking about spirits, talking about, it opens up, and it's kind of scary when I know that to be true for me, and so you have to be careful, I think, with that. If you have anything, yeah.
So do you feel like, do you think that's true?
Well, going back to Mothman, actually, there was a movie made of the Mothman Prophecies, and this
right.
guy portrayed by Richard Gere, he's seeing these beings, and he's becoming obsessed with it, and he tracks down some expert and says, explain to me what's going on. Why are they coming to me? And the expert goes, it's simple. You notice them. And they notice that you notice them.
Yeah. Ooh, I just got the chills.
Yeah,
I just got chills.
I don't feel good.
So if you notice them and they notice that you notice them,
yeah.
then suddenly they want to come over and interact with you more.
Yeah.
It's like someone who's an animal person. The animals seem to come over.
Yeah.
But someone who's like, I'm too busy for this shit. Cats and stuff don't come over.
And so over the years, I have become more and more particular about what I expose myself to. I mean, for example, I have a museum in North Carolina. It's called the Asheville Mystery Museum. And people want to send me terrible stuff, like knives that have been used for murders and like stuff. And I'm like, no, I don't want that.
You don't want that energy.
Don't want to be around it. On the other hand, now Zach Bagans, who I've worked with many times, of course, he hosts the Ghost Adventure show on the Travel Channel. He has a museum in Vegas, and he says, "Bring it on." He takes all that stuff.
That's weird energy.
And the last time I went through his museum, I had a nightmare that night. It was like that dark, all this real serial killer stuff and just like torture and just so.
Have you been to the Museum of Death over here?
Last night I went. Yeah.
Yeah. I went there for 3 hours and it was like it's intense, right?
Similar type of thing. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Dark energy.
Yeah. So I try to stay away from that. When I was younger, I didn't. I mean, when I first started doing paranormal investigation, I didn't really know, of course, if ghosts were real or not. And it took me years of going to haunted places before I ever actually saw a ghost.
Wow.
I got to the point where I thought maybe some people can see them and some people can't because of the rods and the cones in the eyes or the synapses in the brain or whatever. I was coming up with the explanations, and then I finally saw one. So once I started realizing that they exist, then I started thinking, well, I don't think they could follow me back anywhere, from somewhere. So I would go to all these really creepy, like dark places, and then finally one of them did follow me back home. And so these things, I don't know if you can say they follow you or if you just open your mind and it attracts them, but you have to be careful with that. And the other day, my friend was saying, you know how people get together and they do rituals to try to conjure up some kind of a supreme being or some kind of a demon
like
or
a seance.
Cthulhu or whatever?
Yeah, no thank you.
He said, well, imagine if you see a little ant in your house. You might not pay much attention to it, but imagine if you saw a ring of ants and they're all moving around and then they start chanting something. You're like, what are these ants doing? And you're going to go over and you're going to want to look, right? And if one of the ants says, kill that other ant, you might be curious to just see what happened. Okay, he's dead. Now what? It's like we don't know if we just look like ants to them. But when we get together, I mean, individually, you can attract some strange phenomena. But when a group of people get together and they do rituals and ceremonies.
It's powerful.
It boils down to manifestation. And you could also say that, if you start hanging out with fishermen, chances are you're eventually going to start fishing. You hang out around bars, chances are you're going to start drinking, right? It's like you put yourself in the energy field that you kind of are inclined to morph into eventually. So you have to be particular about that. It's almost like when it comes to drugs, they say you're better off to never take it for the first time because then you won't know if you can handle it or not. Don't even mess with it.
Does this relate to witchcraft as well? Because I did a spell one time when I was younger. Me and my friends surrounded ourselves with candles, and I got these old witchcraft books from like the library, and we were doing this spell, and it was we read it wrong, and it was something about like making it stop raining or something, and it was like lightly raining outside when we started. We were young, and we were like, let's do it, but it was like. We were trying to do something that we thought was already happening, and we started doing it, and the spell, and it was like I walk where the rain falls, below the east I walk, or something like that. I walk where the rain falls, within the dawn I walk.
I deny this.
And it started pouring rain.
That might be good today with the fires down the road. I'm just saying.
I know. No, but then and then all of a sudden it started thundering, and then when we were at the very end, everything just stopped.
Yeah.
And we're like, what happened? What happened? And we went back in the book, and we're like, oh, it's to make like the rain stop or something. It was some like weird really crazy emotional thing. And then we're like, did we do that? And then we're like, give us a sign. My brother walked into the bathroom a second later, turned on the light. The whole lights for the whole top floor of our apartment exploded.
Oh, wow.
And we were like, whoa, like, did we do that? And what's with that glass up there? I just noticed that.
I did too.
That's freaking me out.
What's
Why
the
is
glass
that
up
glass
there?
up there? That's odd.
I noticed that when I walked
See, that's like freaking me out. See, so it's like, is that like playing in like an energy of like a world?
Yeah, because
Is there a term for that other like layer of
reality.
Yeah.
well, some people think of it as the ether.
Okay.
Obviously the spiritual realm is you can call it many different things, but I wrote a book called it was a book about manifestation called Use the Force, a Jedi's Guide to the Law of Attraction. And one of the things I wrote about was sympathetic resonance. And so what that means is if we have a room that's empty except for two identical pianos, and one man walks into that room and he bangs a chord on one of the pianos, the other piano will play that same chord even though he never touches it.
That happens in real life?
Yes, it's called sympathetic resonance, and you can see this also demonstrated with tuning forks. There are videos on YouTube that will show you this, where you take two tuning forks and you can strike one and hold it near the other one, and the other one will start ringing. And what that shows you is that when you send out a signal, it activates a corresponding signal that is then sent back to the original source. So it's a very real physical way for an engineer to wrap his or her mind around the idea that what you put out there is having an effect on the material world.
I needed to hear this.
And so when you create a mold, a mental mold, then that mold is what eventually the material matter will form around. And that's also easily demonstrated with what's called cymatics, which is when you take something like a thin sheet of metal and you sprinkle a layer of salt or sand on it, and then you play tones underneath it on a speaker. And as you change the tones, the sand will snap into all of these amazing patterns that look like different kinds of snowflakes and whatnot. And this works three-dimensionally. You can play it in water, and you get all these little mountains and ridges. And so this is another illustration of how that the invisible vibration is, again, it's the mold, it's the foundation to which these physical particles sort of snap in. And so you can create your realistic experience,
Your reality,
for better or for worse, in a very literal way by focusing that mental energy that you have on whatever it is you want to manifest.
I like that. I believe that.
Yeah, that's why, like, I'm prone to, like, a lot of negative thinking. Oftentimes, my first thought can be, like, negative about something. It's such a process for me to undo that and be like, no, I can't think that. Like, switch to a positive thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like that fear that I'm going to be creating my reality with my negative thinking. Thanks, Mom. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So do you have any suggestions on, like, positively manifesting, maybe getting rid of inner critic stuff? I don't know if that's...
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote a lot about these techniques in that book, Use the Force. For one thing, I believe
I'm going to buy it.
And you know what? It's cheap. You can. I read it as an audiobook. It's also
cool.
on Kindle. That's on Amazon. My website is joshuapwarren.com. It's just
How do you
my
spell
name.
that?
There's no period after the P. It's Joshua, Joshua P. My middle name's Paul, and then Warren, WARREN.
.com?
Yeah, if you go to joshuapwarren.com, you'll find all kinds of crazy videos and pictures.
Oh, I'm going to go there. That'll be cool.
Yeah,
I also have a
on it.
curiosity shop that's got all this amazing stuff
I saw
that you
the
can't
eye
find.
orbs. That was
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, those are really cool.
What are they?
They're called Tibetan emos, and they're little semi-dome shaped things that you put over your eyes, and it converts your brain state into the theta state, which is the most receptive psychic state.
Wow.
But as far as techniques are concerned, there is this great quote that is often attributed to Albert Einstein, where he says the most important decision that you can make is whether or not you live in a friendly or an unfriendly universe. Okay, now that's a decision that you make. And so what I found, and here's what I started doing years ago, doesn't matter whether or not you believe in God or spirits or any of that stuff. Just try this out. Every day when you get up, and you can make a little reminder, however you need to be reminded of this. Every single day, just imagine, just pretend, just play along. Pretend that the universe can hear you and say, I love you, and I know that you want me to be a happy, successful person. And that's it. Just say, I love you, and I know that you want me to be a happy, successful person. And it's even better if you say, I love you, and I know I live in a friendly universe that wants me to be a happy, successful person, okay? And what you find, okay, if you do this as an experiment, again, you don't have to believe it, but if you take a moment and you do that, then what you find is that the universe will start to behave that way toward you. And it happens with these incredible synchronicities. Opportunities arise. I mean, it's like me, for example. Like I say, I've been self-employed since I was 18 years old. I do what I love. I get to travel the world investigating all these amazing things. I published over 20 books with some of the biggest publishers in the world. I've been all over the television, History Channel and Travel Channel and Discovery Channel and Sci-Fi Channel and Animal Planet. And I mean, here I am on your beautiful podcast. I am on Coast to Coast AM. I get to travel around.
Love Coast to Coast.
I have, museums. I have a show in Vegas called the Creepy Vegas Ghost and UFO Show that we do every Saturday.
We have to.
We
gotta
check it out.
Yeah.
When we're
You've
in
got
Vegas.
to.
Yeah.
would love
Please
to.
come and be my VIPs for the show. You'll
I'd love that. I
So
would
cool.
truly love to do that.
So, and I say this, because I want to impress upon you that this works. It's worked for me, and everybody who takes it seriously, they have success stories. So that's the first thing that you need to do. The second thing is,
What is the saying? I love you.
We'll
Yeah.
write it down after.
think of the universe and say, I love you, and I know that you want me to be a happy, successful person in this friendly universe. Something, it doesn't have to be that exact. And the next thing is, and this is the hardest thing for most people, going back to sympathetic resonance. You have got to do your absolute best, at least for a period of time while you're getting your head on straight, so to speak, to stay away from things that make you feel bad. People that make you feel bad.
Yes.
Information that makes you feel bad.
Social media.
You just stay away from it. You have to do that at least for a certain period of time. Give yourself a month to distance yourself from that.
Yeah, there's people that I have in my life that I'm like, I feel bad when I hang out with
Yeah.
them. I can't.
Talking to them, it always brings you down. It's negative.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
staying away.
And I don't care if you're related to the person or if it's somebody you work with. If you hate your job, make a leap of faith.
Mom, I
Quit
can't
that
talk
job
to you for a month.
and that's right. I'm serious. You have to do that. If
I'm down to do that
it's
kind of
giving you
shit.
that reaction.
Yeah.
Because imagine if you get knocked to the floor and every time you rise up 3 or 4 inches, I push you back down. Okay, you're never going to make it off the floor. You got to have a moment of rest from anything that weakens you. Negativity weakens you. When you're exposed to bad stuff, it physically weakens you. This is testable, and so. You need to stay away from the stuff that weakens you so you can become strong, and then you can better handle if you have to, because I know you have to deal with your family and stuff, even if you don't like it sometimes.
Yeah.
But you're going to come at it from a stronger position, and you're going to come at it from a wiser point of view. And there are lots of little techniques, little things that you can think about. Here's another thing I'll just toss out there real quick. Pick a moment in your life. Doesn't matter what that moment is, that you associate with happiness. It could be eating an ice cream cone. It could be watching a sunset or hugging a loved one. It doesn't matter how big or how small it is, but it has to be something that made you really, really happy. For example, I had a moment where I was sitting on this cobblestone street in Puerto Rico, and it was beautiful, and there was a breeze blowing, and I was having a mojito or whatever, and there was salsa music, and I just felt really good and happy. And I just, so take that moment. This is your go-to vision for when you start catching yourself feeling critical or negative or depressed or nasty. You switch to that in your mind. Make it something simple so it doesn't take a lot of effort. But because you're going to encounter negativity. just driving around here in L.A., I don't know how you guys do it.
Yeah.
All day.
Yeah.
But that is another. So these are some simple things you can do to start getting your mind where it needs to be, and then when you get strong enough, you can continue that process very easily, and you will start seeing the most amazing things crackle. You won't need money anymore. Your health will be good. Your relationships will improve. I'm telling you, opportunities will just come at you out of the blue, just like being here on your show. I was telling Chelsea, 10 years ago, I met Todd Lincoln, the director of the Apparition movie, because he heard me on the radio, hired me as a technical consultant on that movie. And then he was the one who told me about the podcast and said, yeah, and so I was like, hey, that was just a nice little thing that the universe said, hey, come and meet these cool people. And now I got to go on a tour of the Comedy Store. And I'm a big stand-up fan. Like, these amazing little synchronistic opportunities will just come to you.
Wow.
And I'm sure that the two of you being involved in show business, you probably hear these stories about people saying, like, I'm the luckiest person in the world.
Yeah.
I got my break, and I don't even know how this happened.
Yeah, all the time.
It's the mindset. That's where it starts.
It's the mindset.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's hard to switch because I'll get negative, and I'm like, then more negative comes. I'm like, I gotta switch it.
That's sympathetic resonance. Negativity is you're gonna create negativity.
This has been such an awesome episode. There's so much that we haven't even gotten into ghosts yet.
Yeah,
I know.
And also, again, at the start of the episode, I asked if you'd like to be preferred to be called as a ghost hunter, paranormal expert. Obviously, there's all these other things that go along with it. So what is the umbrella term? Really, how do you, a Renaissance, otherworld, like, I don't know, what is...
That's a great question. I often when people ask me what I do, my answer depends on the context.
What are some of the fun answers you throw out?
But I often refer to myself just simply as an author, because I believe everything that I put out there begins with writing. And you know that as stand-ups. I mean, you have to sit down and write your material
first, and then you perform it.
Yeah. And so, but I am probably when it gets to maybe one of the best umbrella terms is a metaphysician, okay, or a metaphysical explorer or a metaphysical investigator, because
I like that.
Metaphysical covers a lot of territory, and because not everything has to be spooky all the time. It's like here's what I found is that I got into the paranormal stuff because I was fascinated with learning how it's possible for something like a ghost to materialize in the physical world. And of course, the ideas associated with an afterlife and your identity and the meaning of life, all that stuff is great as well. But I was very specifically wondering, like, if this thing just appears, where's the battery? Where's the power supply? Like, is that something we can tap into? How does that happen? And so I got into studying how to help ghosts manifest by changing the physical environment. So I got different types of equipment like Van de Graaff generators that produce an extra electrostatic charge, and Tesla coils and all these things, and I would transmit different things into an environment, and I found that I could actually enhance the probability of a ghost appearing, or for that matter disappearing, using these different techniques and tools. And so I started realizing, okay, what I'm really studying here is the relationship between matter and energy. And yes, that applies to a lot of the spooky stuff, like how a ghost will materialize or how a UFO might appear and disappear and all that. But it can also be applied to really good positive things as well. And if we're studying the paranormal, well, to what end? I mean, what's the point of this? Anything that we study and investigate should be ultimately to make our lives better. And so by studying stuff that is creepy to some, because the unknown is generally creepy.
Unsettling.
Yeah. By studying that stuff, I've learned a lot of information that is becoming useful for people in terms of saying, look, here's how you do this. You can use it however you want. If you want to take it and you want to conjure up a ghost, or you want to summon an alien, or you want to have a psychic experience and you want to see into the future, I mean, and let me tell you, ESP is real. Okay?
It is real.
I win a lot of money in Las Vegas using my techniques with ESP. Just the other day, and this is an honest God true story. I woke up in the middle of the night, and something was forcing me to get a pen and paper and write down the number 91. And I had no idea why, and that's never happened to me that I've been like, okay, I got to write this down. So I wrote down 91, and then I wrote France. Okay, so the next day I got up and I was like, I don't know what this means. 91 in France, but it probably is some kind of a gambling thing, because a lot of times I have these visions that turn out to be winning money, jackpots and stuff. So I was like, well, the Parisian is right down the road, so, and I had never even been to the Parisian, the casino. They have the big Eiffel Tower and everything.
I like that place. It's a very,
Yeah.
I don't know why, there's energy there.
Yeah.
I like the Paris Hotel.
So I told my wife, Lauren, I said, we got to go to the Parisian. There's something to do with the 91. I think I'm going to win some money. She says, okay. She's seen me do this enough times. She's like, all right, fine.
Wow.
So we drove over to the Parisian. I walked through the entire place, seeing if a 91 stuck anywhere. Didn't see anything that rung a bell. And then, so I walked by the roulette table, and I looked down, and I say, well, there's no 91 on the roulette table, but there is a 19. And there were all these people sitting around the roulette wheel who'd been obviously there for quite a while.
And how'd you know which table to pick? Because there's probably a couple of different roulette tables.
Just the first one I walked up to.
Okay.
Yeah, there were probably 3 or 4 of them. I took out a $100 bill.
Wow.
I put it on number 19, and they rolled the wheel, and it hit 19, and they gave me $3,500.
Wow.
And everybody was like,
Wow.
how did you do that? And I said, I had a dream last night.
Wow.
And they're just
God.
like, so I got my $3,500, and I walked off into the sunset, and everybody looked like they'd just seen a ghost.
And maybe they did.
Yeah. So that kind of stuff happens to me.
Wow.
And I wrote a book called Finding Your Magic, which is also on my website, joshuapwarren.com. And it's got a lot of techniques that are you can apply to that sort of thing, like gambling and ESP being, I mean, when stuff like that happens to you over and over, that is proof that
Vision boards work
ESP,
too, right?
yeah.
Because I look at my vision board, it's all, I'm accomplishing a lot.
wishing machines are sort of more advanced versions of.
Tell me about
I
that.
vision
saw
boards.
that you have one of those.
What is that? Please
Yeah.
tell me now.
Did you bring one?
I didn't bring one. No. So a wishing machine, it's technically called a radionics box. And the original one was invented over 100 years ago by a medical doctor named Albert Abrams. He was a very esteemed doctor in his time in San Francisco. But he got into some controversy over this because he couldn't explain how it worked, and that's not cool in science. You're supposed to be able to explain everything. He was interested in figuring out how he could heal cancers and certain things, and without going through the whole process of what he did, it ended up being a box that has an input plate and an output plate. The input plate is metal. The output plate is non-metal. Could be wood, plastic. It's got 9 knobs on it, and each knob can be turned from 0 to 10. It's like a volume knob or a potentiometer. And there is a circuit inside the box that doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense, electronically speaking. And what you do is you take something that you want to manifest, and you put it on the input plate. You go through this simple process using the output plate of tuning it knob by knob, and then once you've tuned it, you set it aside, and you just forget about it. And miraculously, more often than not, as long as you are wishing for something that is possible, you can't wish to fly like Superman or live forever, it will happen. And I became so amazed. I can tell you some of my experiences with this if you want to hear, but I definitely want to tell you that I was so amazed. I partnered up with a guy who builds these things in South Carolina. And I said, why don't we create a project where everybody who buys one of these, we keep track of them. And we see what they're wishing for, what works and what doesn't work. And we survey them and all this. And if somebody gets a machine, doesn't like it, we give them their money back. He says, fine, let's do it. So we now have shipped almost 5,000 of these over the past 8 or 9 years.
Wow.
You know how many people have asked for their money back?
How many?
About 8.
Wow.
About 8 people.
Wow.
On the contrary, I get unbelievable emails every single day from people telling me the most incredible stories. They're everything you can imagine that they're manifesting using this, and it's changed their lives. And I have a podcast that I do, a daily podcast called Joshua P. Warren Daily, and I read a lot of these testimonials on my podcast, and it's startling. And if you want to see some of this stuff for yourself, there's a link, of course, at my website, or go to wishingmachineproject.com, wishingmachineproject.com. There's a bunch of free material there that you can watch that will tell you more about how this works, along with testimonials and stuff.
What's the cost of the wishing machine?
Well, you can get one for $199.
Okay.
Yeah. And there are more elaborate versions of it, more
I might want
advanced
to get
things.
one.
But and each one is handmade, individually handcrafted by this engineer who's the best there is in South Carolina, and it's a very laborious process. Last time I saw him, he had carpal tunnel syndrome.
Oh man,
he was like, I'm having to use my machine to cure my carpal tunnel.
Oh my god.
Which we don't proclaim that this will cure anything. I'm not a doctor. So I don't proclaim that. But what I can tell you is that everything I've ever used it for has come true with such chilling specificity. I mean, again, I don't know if we have time to get into some stories, but you should definitely go check out the wishing machine.
I will.
I noticed,
I'm buying one.
On this list on your website, I also saw something about the most haunted doll.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I'm terrified
of
dolls. I have to know what this haunted doll is.
I had a doll come to life. Yeah.
Babe, stop.
Really?
Yeah, when I was a kid. I don't know if it was real or not, or my imagination, but yeah.
What?
When we were kids, yeah, my cousin and I saw the dolls were like, they would, like when the lights go out, they would like.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I wrote a book about Robert the Haunted Doll, and he is considered by most of us the most haunted doll in the world.
Is it real?
Oh yeah. And my book is called Don't Play with Robert. And
I'm Robert.
Yeah. And so basically this doll, I've been down there. He's in a museum now in Key West, Florida, and I've been down there a number of times investigating this doll. I was given special access to investigate him. Another one of those cool things that I have gotten to do in life. Yeah. And because he's over 100 years old, he's a big doll. He's like 3 feet tall. And he's sitting in a rocking chair. He's dressed like a little sailor.
Why do they always have to make it so scary? Why does he have to be in a fucking rocking chair? Is that just to make it more intense?
Well,
did he come in the rocking chair?
Yeah, he had his own little rocking chair.
Why are rocking chairs so creepy?
Sometimes that chair just rocks back and forth. And his face looks all kind of like degraded and pockmarked and weird. And he has these little black, beady, shark-like eyes, And he has a little stuffed lion in his hands. No. And they keep him now under a glass case in Key West. And when I went down there, I was doing a report for Coast to Coast AM.
Yeah, with
George Norrie. Yeah, he's a good friend.
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah, and so that doll had been under that glass case for years. And the town that owns the museum, they actually had some dudes come in with big old suction cups and lift that heavy glass case off of him so I could be the first person in years to actually get up there and touch this doll that all these people have been obsessed with. And here's one of the things, without getting into the backstory, because I guess I'll just tell you quickly that supposedly there was this family, a wealthy family in Key West in the early 1900s that had a little boy, and the little boy's name was Robert Eugene Otto, but they called him Gene. And the story that the locals will tell you is that there was a servant from Haiti who worked in the house, and she became disgruntled. And so she either created or modified a doll for the little boy, which was basically like a big voodoo doll of the little boy. And they called him Robert because the boy's name was Robert Eugene Otto. And the boy became absolutely obsessed with this doll for the rest of his life. Even as a grown man, his wife couldn't stand it because he had all of these little pieces of furniture made for him and gave him his own room and just
whoa.
And sometimes his wife would show up in town with bruises And people would come to him and say, "Are you beating your wife?" And he would say, "Robert did it."
No.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I get the chills.
So over the years, this doll has passed through many different hands, and people have every story you can imagine associated with this doll. To this day, if you go to Key West, the walls of the room he's in are plastered with thousands of letters from people who are asking his forgiveness because they went there and photographed him without asking permission, and they went back home and like their dog died and their luggage got lost. And I mean, like, yeah, horrible. So you're not supposed to photograph him without permission. So when I went in there and they lifted the glass case off,
Were you scared?
I was a little hesitant. I wasn't sure, I mean, and so I said, but I was really respectful. I was like,
Respect
"Hi,
is a big
Robert,"
thing, right?
Yeah. And so I was the first person apparently ever in my investigation to shine a black light on him, a UV light, because UV doesn't really pass through glass. You got to remove that glass. Mm-hmm. When I hit him with that UV light, boom, a symbol appeared on his sleeve that was otherwise invisible. I was the first person to ever see this symbol other than the person who had put it there. And it looked like one of these kind of strange, distorted snowflake type things I was mentioning. And I was like, what the heck is that? So I started looking through these old grimoires, which are these books of spells and
Voodoo?
magic from even medieval times. And I found something that looks very much like that symbol.
Wow.
Used to animate the dead or to animate the inanimate. And I talked to so many people down there who told me that they had seen him move. Okay. And I'm talking a couple of lawyers. I mean, these are people who, they're not like paranormal enthusiasts who just happened. That I left there with a whole new mindset because, look, I never saw Robert like move around suddenly. I do believe I saw his expression change. But I feel like that, we can't even explain the relationship between the...
I saw something move.
No, you did not. No, you did not. Shut the fuck up.
I saw a little black thing.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
I just saw something run.
No, you didn't.
I just saw a little black thing run, but it was...
No, you
I'm-
didn't.
is that
I'm
mine?
taking my purse off.
I believe it. We're talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so
something
is it true
just
when
ran
you
on the
start
base
to-
of the...
When you start to talk about things, the things just start popping up?
You notice them, and they notice that you
I'm
notice them.
scared.
Something just ran
I'm
along
not...
the board, like a black object like that. I'm not kidding.
Stop.
I'm not joking.
Might be in your bedroom tonight.
No, no.
Fuck up. Stop it. No.
Whatever it is.
No.
No. We rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ.
Did you guys do that?
We'll break out the equipment.
So was that, sorry, so I still want to ask you some ghost stuff too.
Yeah.
Was that babe?
Okay.
Was that so then.
So
sorry.
I talked to enough people who said they saw him move. I started thinking, you know what? We can't even explain the mind-body relationship. We can't even explain how your body makes your mind move. So, for example, scientists are used to, for every action there's an opposite but equal reaction. That makes sense under a microscope. That makes sense in the physics lab. But when you just remove half of that, now you've got one side. What's moving it? How do I move my arm just because I want to move it? Where's the force coming from that makes that happen? We don't understand how consciousness animates the physical body that we have, which is doomed to disintegrate in the earth. So what makes it so hard to believe that a consciousness or a spirit might be able to animate another type of inanimate
like a parasite
body? And a doll is a pretty close, representation of us. So could your spirit or some spiritual energy be put into a doll that can give that doll some life? And is that why voodoo dolls do work so well, for example?
Voodoo dolls are scary. That kind of, the Haitian,
Yeah.
that, what do you call, like Jamaican, like that. For some reason, I've always been very afraid of zombification, like that whole, what do you call that? Like Jamaican,
It's Haitian.
black magic, Haitian, like black magic. That's
Voodoo
always,
magic.
yeah, it's always
Creole.
that's always really scared me.
It's Haitian, not Jamaican, right? Or is there a Jamaican?
It stems mainly from Haiti, but all of those islands in Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, they all have versions of this.
Right.
The voodoo, voodoo, and all that.
It's scary to me.
Yeah.
Have you been to Necromance, the store on Melrose?
No, huh?
I think you'll enjoy that.
It's like an oddities.
It's an oddities, like
Okay.
kind of cool store on Melrose.
Taxidermy. So
Okay.
let's talk. Let's get into ghosts. So I have had 2 dreams after leaving the Comedy Store, with ghosts visiting me. The first one was I was downstairs in this basement, and another guy I work with lifted up this like portal. It was a wooden door that I understood to be a portal, and he lifted it from this, and all of these ghosts started pouring out. And when they flew past me, I could feel it.
Where
and
was this?
It was a dream.
Oh.
And when they flew past me, I could feel it like hitting me in my dream. Like it didn't hurt, but it did, kind of thing. So that was the first one. And then I found out there was a portal down here later when I talked to people about this.
I have one of my best friends is a gypsy psychic, Psychic Daniel. Friend of Chelsea's. He's been on our podcast a bunch. We've done podcasts with him over the years. He's a very, very close friend of mine. And yeah, he came down here and he said this is a portal down here.
So the second dream I had, I work in the cover booth upstairs, which is like a ticket booth area. And when I went home that night, and I'll work until 2 a.m. And when I went home that night, I had a dream that all these ghosts visited me. So I was sitting in the booth, and they all one by one started floating towards me. And it's like I almost felt them like going through me, and I was like mesmerized as it just came towards me. And one of them was like a guy who had like a bowler hat on, which I later found out was like potentially one of the resident ghosts here. And they were like fun and like had like, they were very charismatic, like a little flirtatious. There was like a bigger, overweight, like heavier female ghost. And then I think one other one. And then they were like, we have to go. And then just like went away. And then but I felt them both times. So they're like, I haven't talked about the dreams in a while, so that's just kind of like the vague description of it. I don't have to get that much into it. But yeah, do you think that it's a ghost visiting me in my dreams from coming from work, or do you think that's just a dream that I had?
Well, it could be either one. That's one of the things that makes dreams so complex, because I think when you dream, there are 3 different things happening. I guess when you sleep in general, there are 3 different things happening. For one thing, the body is healing itself, and in order for that to happen, the energy body is removed and elevated out of the way. So all the energy that's within the body can move undistracted to go to the cells that need to be repaired and all that kind of physical stuff. So you're literally out of your body to some extent. And I have a very interesting Kirlian photograph that's got a great story behind it, where I saw a martial artist knock a guy out without touching him, and I took a Kirlian photograph. It's a photograph of the energy around your hand, for example, and you can see the physical body separate from the energy body for a split second. They're knocked to jar. So when you sleep, you're out of your body, and so while you're out of your body, and everything's being processed, sometimes the things you were exposed to during the day are just being stored. So if you watched a documentary about snakes before you went to bed, then you might see a snake because you're kind of reliving something about that. That's pretty normal. The second thing is you are being out of your body. You are more aware of other dimensions that you're usually distracted from, because we're so honed into the animalistic aspect of just surviving every day, and we have a very narrow focus. But the third thing is, while you're out there, you become visible to other beings that you're usually not as visible to, because they reside on this other plane. And so it's all of a sudden like you appear in their neck of the woods, And so this is an opportunity for spiritual beings to come up to you and have more direct access to you. Now, here's something that's kind of scary. I do think there's pretty good evidence for the fact that sometimes when you are lying there asleep, there are beings that come into your room and feed off of your energy like parasites. And I'll tell you a story about that.
I have a fucking thing for that. Yeah.
A pouch.
Yeah,
over
we probably
the bed.
shouldn't talk. Yeah, I have gypsies protection. I have
Do you know about
I have
those?
white magic protection.
Not specifically, but I know there are a number of things that people do to try to prevent that. Well, in the Victorian era in England, when they would go out and investigate haunted houses, they would usually bring with them a person called a sleeper. And that person's job was to go to the site and just take a nap while they were doing the investigation. The idea being that that person's dormant energy is something that would enhance the activity. And it works. I've done that. So when you're lying there asleep, here's a good example of this. Years ago, there was this woman in Connecticut who contacted me. And she was fairly young. I think she was in her 20s and had just started working a new job in a new town and rented a house that was way too big for one person. You know, it had, it's like an old house, 2 or 3 stories. And she came to work one day and told her coworkers, because I talked to a coworker, said every night at exactly 2 o'clock in the morning, boom, I just bolt straight up in bed, just out of the blue. I'm just like wide awake. I look at the clock; it's 2 o'clock. She says, "I've been doing this now for several nights in a row, and I don't know what's happening. I don't hear anything disturbing me." So one of her friends, her coworkers, gave her a video camera and told her how to set it up so it could record while she was sleeping to some extent. So sure enough, she woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning. And then the next day, she played the tape back, and here's what you see. So here she is lying there, sleeping soundly. At 1:58 a.m., this tall, dark form that looks very much like the Grim Reaper, wearing some kind of a long cloak, silently glides right up there to her bedside and just stands there right next to her, just sort of breathing. And then at 2 a.m. turns around and floats back off. And she bolts upright in bed. And so that kind of thing is much more common than you would think. And so it is possible that you and I, we have to eat in order to survive. And so we think that means, well, we have to do this crude thing where we take something, we put it in our mouths and we chew it up and we swallow it. But these other beings may be able to just skip that step.
And just feed off your energy.
Go straight to the energy. Because that's all we're getting from the plants and the animals we eat is energy. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So if these things are evolved in some form to absorb energy directly, they can come up there and perhaps do that. And some of these might latch on to a person, and this is what we consider demonic. Because that thing, it's just going to take and take and take and take until it kills you.
So I had my ex was a very dark person, and she collected mourning jewelry and had all this stuff, and I was still friends with my psychic friend, and he was like, dude, she's bad. Stay away from her. I was living at her house, and she was very rich, so it was like a fucking death museum in there, just stuff from the 1800s. Like, she wanted to get a fetus. That was her big thing. And yeah, that's who I went to the Museum of Death with. And and she would be sleeping there, and I like one time a gust of wind just came through the room, and the cat freaked out. I'm like, there's no windows. I'm like, what the hell is going on? So all this stuff would go on, and my psychic friend had a detached. There was something. She put something on me, and then recently I went fishing at night. Like at midnight, and something, I was like, something's wrong. I felt something on me, and he was like, he didn't even know. He goes, were you at the ocean at midnight this last week? And I was like, yeah, out of nowhere. I went night fishing with some guys from the Comedy Store. It was just like, he goes, yeah, something attached to you.
Yeah.
I think I'm very porous to that because I'm open, and I'm very open. I live like kind of out of my heart. And so he goes, don't worry, I took it away. So I told him I was doing this, and I think he's protecting me right now. But
he said the psychic friend said, I'm
he
not
said
open
he
to
said
that.
Chelsea doesn't have time for these ghosts, so they don't fuck with her because she's like, oh fuck, get away. But we went to
Is that
Echo
possible?
Park.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we went to Echo Park Lake, and something attached to me at Echo Park Lake. Her and I were on a boat together. You know that famous lake in Echo Park.
And it's like there was bodies buried.
Yeah,
under
and he said,
it.
"Did you go by a body of water?" I said, "Yeah." So when I'm by bodies of water, like there's certain, I'm porous to that. So I just have to be conscious of that. One thing that I do, and I feel it attached to my back, and I have to ask him to take it off. But one thing that I have, and it's very strange because I didn't know since I was a little kid I've had it, but I don't know if you've ever experienced sleep paralysis.
I hear about it all the time, but
It's
I can't say I've ever had it. Yeah.
So your brain wakes up, but your body doesn't, and it's like you're paralyzed. It feels like you're being abducted. It feels like a demon's inside you. And I didn't, since I was a kid, how do you explain that when you're a kid?
Yeah.
So I finally, when the internet came out and Google kind of got big and you could get some of these answers to some of these questions, it was like sleep paralysis. So I was like, that's exactly what I have. But it's like something possesses you while you're asleep, and you're like, ugh, and you have to like talk yourself. You have to like be like, it's like you're in ice, suspended. You're like, move my hands, and it takes everything for you to go, and you slowly have to wake yourself up. But I wondered if you knew anything about that, because I think there's some kind of dark force attached to sleep paralysis, and if you just Google sleep paralysis, there'll be a lot of like people's drawings of what it's like, and it's always like just like an alien or some dark force attached. It's a very weird, extremely unpleasant thing.
Well, that goes back to some of the earliest descriptions from hundreds of years ago. They called it the old hag. Yeah, and a lot of people still refer to it as the old hag syndrome, and that's because that frequently when someone is experiencing sleep paralysis and someone else sees that person at that moment, they describe seeing some type of a very ugly, decrepit, scary-looking, hunched-over old woman-looking figure, like a witch with long hair.
It's something like that
on top of their chest.
That is another on top of your chest. You feel something trying to enter your heart like that.
Yeah, and they call that the old hag. They say she looks like an old hag from a grim fairy tale.
Fucking.
And that it's one of those things where she's holding you down and she is taking your energy from you. Mm-hmm. And now, of course, as you said, scientists, they say, well, this is sleep paralysis, and I think they say it has something to do with just a disconnect between the nerves or whatever, however they explain it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But most people say, look, however it is scientifically and clinically described, it feels more like there's something on top of you.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's trying to go into your psyche.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I swear to God, I've had it since I was a little kid, and it became less scary since I was like, oh, it's not just me, and there's other people that have described it as sleep paralysis, but I don't get it too much anymore. I was taking a lot of drugs, and I think that helped it, or helped bring it on. But if I'm under stress, it happens. But I get it probably once or twice a year, and it's like something is trying to enter your psyche, and it's not pleasant. It feels like rape, like emotional or spiritual rape.
It's probably another example of these demonic or parasitic beings that take advantage of you when you're sleeping and are feeding on you. And, if you find somebody who really seems to be exhibiting signs of demonic possession, what happens is they start going through personality changes. And it's because that they're not getting proper rest, and because they start feeling really weak and worn down, and they start getting really sick, and they lose their appetite, and then a lot of them, they turn to drugs or alcohol in order to try to self-medicate and to relieve some of that. But in many cases, all that does is make them even weaker, because those things are weakening your body. It's like, that's the thing. Like when you have a shot of tequila or whatever, it feels good, but the reason it feels good is because it's killing you a little bit because your spirit's coming out of your body a little bit.
And they call it a spirit.
That's why they call it a spirit, really, because they used to believe that you would have a spirit possessing you when you had that sensation.
Yeah.
And so, but these, we know they're poison. They're fun, but you got to be careful with how you use them.
Yeah, it's poison.
Yeah, and so basically, people, they weaken their bodies, and then if this continues, then the person finally becomes so sleep deprived, so unhealthy, so irritable that they either kill themselves or they just expire.
Did you hear that? Oh. Okay. Oh my God. I get so scared. I'm so scared this whole time. I didn't even know that was you. Can I ask you another thing? So sometimes, I'll walk into a Sometimes I'll walk into a room and I'll get like a really creeped out energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a very, very imaginative person. I'm a creative person.
You're smart though. You're spiritually smart.
I freak myself out a lot, and I can't tell oftentimes if I'm freaking myself out and imagining something, or if I'm really, because I'll pick up on an energy. Bless you.
Thank you.
I'll pick up on an energy and I'll like run with it, and I'll start to convince myself. And I can't tell if I'm imagining something or if I'm really picking up on something.
Mm-hmm.
Little examples. I often notice this, and again, I can't tell if in really shitty hotel rooms, I'll often pick up on really bad energy. We had a weird ghost experience in Fresno.
That was real.
Where we were in this really shitty hotel room that was like a crackhead, like whorehouse, essentially.
Someone put us up. Hey, come do my comedy show, and you don't know them.
Really
and they just put you in pieces of
it
shit.
was a really gross place. And then we were trying to watch TV. And we heard like a weird noise, and then like every single channel we turned was like death, murder, and it was every word.
We turned
when we changed a channel,
scary.
It was like death, murder, monsters, like kill, and then we're like and then all of a sudden like we're like, is this haunted? And then an iron went.
We said show us or something, and an iron just
flew across the room.
Holy cow.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen every day, does it?
No,
no. And
we Googled it, remember, and people were like, this place is haunted, or this place is like.
And just recently, I, was in Portland staying at a hotel doing stand-up, and all the lighting, and this is like another thing, that like creepy yellow-ish old lighting for those very transient hotel rooms that like flight attendants will stay at. This hotel room was so creepy, and I was in it by myself, and I was so scared. And I asked the headliner, I said, hey, and I didn't want to, we were there for 3 nights in separate rooms, and I didn't want to ask him until like the second or third night. And I was like, hey, do you think like this hotel is haunted? Because I get really scared. He was like, I always have. And then the next morning, he goes, I woke up and I only slept 3 hours because I saw my dad's dead body sitting over. And we like,
really?
Yeah, Bobby said that.
Oh my gosh.
And we freaked ourselves out. But it's like, do you think there's something to like hotels or picking up energies or?
Oh yeah. Well, when I wrote a book called How to Hunt Ghosts that was published years ago by Simon & Schuster. It's in multiple languages around the world. It did so well that frequently when I go to conferences, people will come up to me and say, I started my whole team because I read that book. And
that's cool.
And in that book, I really broke down the different types of ghosts. And you basically have what you call entities and imprints. Now, there are some other variations on this, like poltergeist would go into certain classifications as well. But usually, okay, so here's the difference. An entity is a ghost that seems to be interactive, it's conscious, it's aware, it's unpredictable. It's very much like you would imagine a disembodied spirit to be, in the old traditional sense. But the much more common type of ghost is an imprint. An imprint is the opposite. It is redundant, it's predictable, it is non-interactive. It's like a recording of something that is burned into the environment that can replay itself over and over at certain times, under certain circumstances, and for certain people. So it's kind of like a big movie that's been burned into the environment. And that's really exciting because that indicates that there is some element of the environment that acts as a recording medium. And if we understand how that works, then eventually we might be able to create a camera that will allow us to go to any location and to look back in time and see things that have happened at that spot.
That is so. I instantly just started thinking about woolly mammoths, and
Yeah.
that would be beyond. That'd be priceless. I'd pay any amount of dollar to be able to experience looking into the Ice Age and caveman.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It would also be extremely controversial because suddenly we would get to see history as it really happened.
Not as it was written.
Yeah, and also But look at privacy concerns. Getting back to your hotel.
Yes.
What if you take one of these things into a hotel room and you can look back and see what happened yesterday, the day before, the day before, the day. So there are huge implications if we ever get to the point where we can do that, and that is one of the possible practical benefits of studying ghosts. But places where there has been some kind of a very dramatic event, whether it's good or bad,
A heightened.
Overdose, murder, suicide. Is that what you're referring to?
Absolutely.
Just some big spike of emotion.
Especially tragic things. And it was funny because earlier we were on stage here at the Comedy Store, and I stood there on the stage where all of these legendary comedians
Talking about the main room stage.
Yeah, and I was saying, it feels like you're at the center of the world. I'm standing in the middle of a dynamo here because there is like a whirlwind of energy that's just been burned right in the middle of that stage.
Agreed.
And so that is what often happens at a what we call a haunted location. And some places are more or less conducive to be imprinted upon because of atmospheric conditions, geologic conditions, conditions that we don't understand. So there are places that are more or less prone to have this imprint. Now, I think that once the imprint gets there, it has a tendency to fade some over time. Kind of like a magnetic signal on an old VHS tape. Over time, it just kind of wears down. But if it keeps getting repeated, it doesn't. Or some places just hold the charge a little longer. That's why you don't see so many stories about dinosaur ghosts running around and that sort of thing.
Interesting.
But there are some, but not very many. There are even some pictures out there that are pretty compelling of what may be dinosaur ghosts. And
wow.
I have some. If you go to joshuapwarren.com and click a section called the Gallery of the Strange, you'll see, if you flip through there, some of those. But anyway, hotel rooms. A lot of dramatic things happen in hotel rooms.
You go there to do dirt.
You go there because you're doing something special usually, you know, or you're in a bad state.
Yeah.
Theaters, my God, it doesn't matter what kind of theater it is. If it's on Broadway or if it's a comedy store theater, whatever it is, you've got people up there who are expending an enormous amount of energy.
Yes.
And they're imagining scenes that are extraordinary, which is what makes them funny or tragic or whatever. It gets a reaction, you're
so heightened. It's such a yeah.
And there's this whole thing. This is a whole other thing we get into called tulpas, which tulpas are thought forms that can be created in an environment by people focusing over and over. A quick example of this: in the 1930s, there was an author named Walter Gibson who lived in Greenwich Village in New York, and he wrote these novels about the Shadow, which the Shadow was this, character. He wore a black fedora and a black cape, and he was a crime fighter, and he was so popular that there was huge demand for these novels. So Walter Gibson would sit there, and for years, he would just crank out like a whole novel every month, or sometimes less than a month. He did nothing but sit there and obsessively right. For years later, people who lived in that house said that the house was haunted by his fictional characters.
Wow.
They would see the Shadow whipping around a corner or some villain dashing down a hallway or whatever. And so you, being an imaginative person, if you focus enough, or if you get enough people together, it amounts to the same thing, and they all focus, you can create a tulpa. Santa Claus is a tulpa. There are people who see Santa Claus every year, and these are adults now, and they say that when they see it, it's because we all know what Santa's supposed to be.
Is that why he sees you when you're sleeping?
Yeah, maybe.
He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good.
So be good for
Very
goodness
good.
sake. Can I tell you a story about what happened in the room directly above us?
Wait,
Yeah.
should we take out some equipment too? Do you in here or?
I've got a ton of equipment. If you want to put
Do you
some on the
wanna
table,
do-
Yeah. And may I tell him a story now?
No,
or-
yeah, I was gonna say if you wanted to talk about it while maybe he set something up right here, because I know we're ending.
What
we're
time are
nearing
we at?
towards. We're at 2:07.
Okay.
What time do you have to go?
I could stay a little longer.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Great.
My 3 o'clock just canceled.
you want me to?
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
You want me
That's
to
what I
grab
was worried
some
about.
Stuff, and then I'll set it up while we're talking. You wanna
Yeah,
go-
perfect,
okay,
yeah.
all right, let me go grab some stuff.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Great, Steven, I'm freaked out. How about you?
I've just been
Out.
I've been focusing on the healing powers of Jesus, the protective powers of Jesus. I'm very into the supernatural, but I want to be respectful. I want to learn, experience more. I want to even connect with the other side, but I want to have good experiences, and I don't want to connect with no negative ghost. I don't want to connect with no negative people, but I don't want to connect with no negative ghosts. Only positive ghosts and positive spirits and positive people.
Is that something you were advised by Danny?
Yeah,
Did
yeah,
you
pretty
ask
much.
him
Like
the best way to?
he just says, think of the white healing light of Jesus, and that I think
Okay.
that's really powerful. But I'd like to tell you this story about upstairs. What happened too while you're setting up, and I'll make it brief. I was here, second week working here. We are a late night rowdy club. This club was on Unsolved Mysteries, a very haunted building. People have made it, been broken, this is a lot of energy. People coming all over the world to walk into this building to prove themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So upstairs, I'm sitting working in the room. It's 1:45 at night. There's 3 or 4 people watching on stage. There's a comedian on stage named Jesus Trejo, who actually has a special coming out right now. And I look up. There's an older, black man sitting next to me, just kind of half drunk, by me, kind of regular. I forgot his name. He's my buddy, but he would just kind of come in and get drunk and
the
hang
guy
out.
who looks like Samuel L. Jackson with the walking stick?
Exactly. Well, fuck. Why did I just forget his name?
I don't know what his name is.
Yeah, he's the best. I follow him on social media. He's him and that stick
He
go
would
everywhere.
be a character in a parent in a
Yeah.
him and Bruce.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So I look up, and Jesus is on stage, and a perfect ball of smoke starts hovering over his head. Looks like a globe, a spinning globe ball of smoke. And I look over at the old man. I say, "Hey, are you seeing this ball of smoke?" He goes, "I see that ball of smoke." I go, "Is someone smoking a cigarette or a vape?" And we look, and no one's smoking. Jesus runs off stage into the kitchen. I don't know anybody. I've only been working here 14 days. So I run into the kitchen. I go, "Dude, something was hovering over your head." He goes, "Shut up. Don't lie to me right now." I said, "Something was hovering over your head." He goes, "I ran off stage early on my set because something was screaming behind the stage going, rah, 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 disrupting his set. There was something behind the curtains screaming at him. And the people in the front row could hear the voice. He could hear the voice, but no one else but me and this guy could see the ball of smoke." So what do you think that was?
So, you say it looked like a ball of smoke?
Yeah, a perfect sphere of rotating smoke.
Okay, that's actually very appropriate for what I'm about to show you.
Oh my God. I don't know. I just get nervous. I'm fucking nervous.
So I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera in here, but
Okay.
we can film it later if you
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
So I want to give you a little demonstration which might apply to that story. I have found in my years of research that often ghostly phenomena appears when electrostatic conditions are perfect. And electrostatic conditions are important because in my laboratory, I'm able to reproduce a lot of the things that people experience when they see ghosts.
Okay.
I can create 3-dimensional light forms. I can make objects move without any physical touch.
You've done that?
Yeah. Make hair stand on end, give you cold chills, all of this by manipulating electrostatics.
Oh my God.
And let me give you an idea of how electrostatics applies to all this. We'll see how well this goes.
Is that the same material where you put that fortune fish in your hand and it flaps around?
No. This is a luminized mylar. Now this is awfully
Make
big.
sure you just... vocalize into here.
Did aluminum foil
Yeah.
come out after Roswell, the Roswell crash in the 50s in New Mexico?
No, it didn't, but I'm not sure about aluminized mylar.
What is this?
Okay, now let's see.
What is this? What is this?
Okay.
Energy?
Now what I'm doing here is I'm producing an electrostatic charge.
You'll get this on video, Steven?
Hold on.
Whoa.
And by doing that, I can create levitation. You see this?
Yeah, I see that.
So this is electrostatic energy levitating a ring of aluminized mylar. This is an example of how that the electrostatic charge in a room can help accentuate levitation and other ghostly phenomena. The idea being that a ghost might be able to somehow manipulate the electrostatic charges in a room in order to create these physical effects.
Got it. Okay.
Oh my God.
And this is a very weak electrostatic charge. So with the strong one, that's when I can create three-dimensional light forms, make other objects move, make your hair stand on end, etc.
Okay.
And a lot of
What
times,
if I put my hand in between this?
it'll
It will
probably
fall?
stick to your
Okay.
hand.
What is your Instagram?
It's I think it's just Joshua P. Actually, it might be. It's either Joshua P. Warren or Shadowbox ENT. I have a company called Shadowbox Enterprises. I can't remember which one it is.
Oh my
If you-
God. So you created this machine?
Actually, this I did not. This is now a. This is marketed for science projects, but I actually have created things that are like this in my laboratory, and so.
Wow.
Now you
Whoa, it's
see,
floating.
Yeah, you see how nicely that
Wow.
thing levitates.
Wow.
Now that means that this room is very conducive to ghostly phenomena.
Are you serious?
Yeah, because
Wow.
because if you go to a room and you don't get it to float very well, then the room is not as conducive. So I wasn't 100% sure this was going to float in here.
Are you? Is this floating a lot better than normal?
Oh yeah. That's a big piece of material right there. So again, I mean.
Wow.
Okay.
So that means we have a good environment for our
Is
ghost.
this the initial test?
Yeah, that's just to see how
Wow.
what the vibe is. In here.
Sorry, excuse
that's-
my reaction.
No, that's really good. And we can do that later if you'd like.
Yes.
So you can get better footage of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Wow.
so we're in a good environment.
Okay. First
So that's
test
step
down.
number one. So now we're going to check out a few other things that are associated with ghosts. As I mentioned, I'm not sure if I mentioned it or not, but I think we all kind of realize that there is some kind of a connection between ghostly phenomena and electrostatic anomalies and electromagnetic anomalies.
It's like a Vox box, or what do they call those? Those
There are different
boxes?
types of the spirit boxes and voice boxes, and I'm not real big on using those, to be honest with you, because I think most of what comes through isn't very clear. I rely a little bit more on measuring fields to find a place where I can set up a camera, and then you get good footage. When you do that.
I want to wave Mike in.
So this is
They're watching.
this is a thermal camera, and
And what does a thermal camera do? It
Measures heat?
It's the. Oh, okay.
yeah. So what this does is
Oh
it
my
picks
God.
up any type of a heat anomaly. So, for example,
Uh,
you see my hand right
I've
there?
been staring at this particular corner, to be
Okay.
honest, as we were talking.
Now
but
watch my hand. I can actually wait a second.
Store.
I don't want to store that. So I can actually change the degree to which it's sensing the heat. You can
Oh
see
my
that?
God! Yeah, this corner to me has been speaking to me.
So it sort of overlays the actual image
Yeah.
there with the heat image. Okay, so let's take a look around here. So what part of the room do you want to look at?
Well, this corner I've been looking at.
Well, can we? I wish we can get up and go. There's something back there. There's a room back there.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see if there's anything anomalous over here. I'm actually this out of the way.
Should we end the episode and just start filming this with a camera?
If you want to do that,
I don't know. What do you think is better? So are we on our feet now? Is that...
Yeah.
What do you think?
We could also record some of it with our iPhone audio and then have Jonah patch that in.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's
Here. Let's just start doing audio on our phone just in case. I want to walk around too, but let's just do a little in the room here.
In here, and then we'll end the episode,
and then
go on the hunt.
Room.
Okay, so let's just see.
And then follow our Instagrams, you guys, if you want to see some clips from the hunt.
Okay, what's that going on? What is that? What is that?
Okay, so there's a strong electromagnetic field here, but it's staying constant, which means that it's most likely artificial. So we don't worry about that.
Okay, yeah. Thank God.
If it starts to get erratic, that's when we start getting really intrigued.
Wow, this is so fun. I think we might have to end the episode and be selfish and just,
No, not yet.
Okay. Because I want to go on a hunt.
I know, we're going to hunt. Okay.
Or appreciate. I don't like the word hunt. That's kind of like, I want to investigate.
All right, let's try this out. This is just another type of meter that picks up electric fields, magnetic fields, electromagnetic fields, radio waves, microwaves. And this one is really cool because this would be a good one to set in a place like the stage we were at and just monitor it, because this is designed to, if you put it on the right setting, to not pick up artificial fields. It's called a natural EM meter. So it only picks up the types of fields that you might have around something living. So for example, I'm going to put this right there and watch it for a second. And what you'll find is after it settles for a minute, if you just wave your hand around it.
Don't put it so close to the mic because it's a little annoying. Okay, so.
You see how it's picking up
your
hand? And if I stand up, see, now it really reacts.
Okay.
So if you put this meter somewhere, and nobody's moving around it,
put it like on the stage.
Yeah,
and then you take a step back and see if
it starts to act like somebody's walking around it. Well, then you know there's something to it.
Wow.
I've had this meter for a long time. You see how the top of it's broken right there? That happened because I had this meter with me at Myrtle's Plantation, which is a big old creepy haunted house in St. Francisville, Louisiana. And I spent the night there by myself.
You spent the night there by yourself. Is this the one that Nick Cage owned?
No. This is a big old 1700s plantation.
That's scary energy.
That's so scary.
And it's
a lot
out
of bad
in the swamps,
things. A lot of bad things happen there.
Stormy night, and a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah, slavery and just nasty shit.
It was so scary what happened. I had the whole place to myself. And that's not the only time I've spent the night by myself.
You've got balls, man. You think people always say you got balls to go on stage and be a comedian?
This is another
That's a certain set of balls to go out in a fucking plantation and channel. That's balls on.
It was creepy.
It's a step past stand-up comedy.
And to take it to the next step, I turned off all the lights.
No.
You have a death wish.
And I was walking around. I did have my camera with the night vision. And as I'm walking around, all of a sudden, and I knew I was the only person on the whole property, all of a sudden, I went into this room where I was sleeping called the General David Bradford Suite. And on the wall, I hear,
no!
And I jumped out of my skin. I was like, what the hell was that? Because I thought, I know nobody's here. And so I went over and I looked all outside and there was nobody around. And I walked back in and I said, who's in here with me? And I did that again on the wall. Okay, now I'm videotaping. This is all on video. And I said, could you do that one more time, please? Could you do it over there this time? Okay, at that point, that's when that
you're like, I'm communicating.
Yeah, I'm communicating.
I'm being heard.
I'm interacting with an invisible, intelligent being here. There's no doubt about it. This continued for 4 hours.
Oh my God.
Was it fun?
No, No, it really was. It was amazing to me, but that was probably the most freaked out I've ever been. And I had this meter in my hand at one point, and I was walking through videotaping the meter. And this thing, it was just like something pulled it right out of my hands. This is a $300 meter. And it went, took a nosedive.
Oh, my gosh.
It didn't affect the meter. It works fine. But every time I see that crack, it reminds me of that night.
Did you sleep that night?
I did. I was so tired. But this is the freakiest part. I was so tired because I hadn't slept for a couple of days, and I was lying there in this big 4-poster bed like Ebenezer Scrooge would sleep in. And the last time I heard it was about 8:30 in the morning on the headboard, right there next to my head. And at that point, now I'm a guy who spent my whole life trying to go out there and experience these things. At that point, I was like, please stop. That's enough. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to see that video footage, if you go to joshuapwarren.com, click the Gallery of the Strange, you can. It's about probably a 10-minute presentation I did with our.
I can't wait to watch that.
Yeah.
And I got it. So did it? I'm sorry. Did it listen to you when you said that's enough?
Yeah, it did.
So it was a gentleman, Southern gentleman.
I don't know. They say that property. There was a plantation owner who was killed there right outside the door. He was shot with a shotgun.
By who?
But there was another plantation owner, and they got into some type of a dispute, and he came in there and shot him.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah, but the property's most haunted by a slave.
Wow.
Yeah, and her name was I think Zoe. And yeah, she was executed there on the property.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway,
do you think I want them to be pushed to the light though? You know what I mean? Like I feel bad that they're trapped. It's like,
well, it's funny because a lot of people wonder like why do so many ghosts seem to be scary or negative or dark? And
they're frustrated.
Well, here's what you have to consider. When you die, I believe, based upon just all the circumstantial evidence that I've seen and the investigations I've done and experiments I've done and people I've talked to, etc., I think that when you die, that you have an opportunity to go to the light, however you perceive that. You go through what's sort of a tunnel. And if you do that and you have a clear conscience, then you welcome that. Okay, you want to go to this next place and see what's going to happen. But if you die, and whether or not there is a God on that other end that's going to judge you, if you believe there might be,
you're not going to want to go to that.
And you've not been the best person, if you've been a Hitler or you've been somebody who is just, a rotten person and you're afraid of being judged, you might want to prolong that meeting as much as you can.
100%. So in this building, They said that one of the ghosts here was a hit, from the mafia days, and it was someone that killed a bunch of people here. He is afraid to cross over.
Yeah.
Because I feel compassion for that. I feel like, man, you made some mistakes. Like, go to the light. I don't know.
Yeah. So that's why you probably often have either people who are evil or people who feel guilty. A lot of people commit suicide and feel bad about that. Or you have people who just have a very strong superficial attachment
to this realm.
Yeah,
to Earth.
It could be a person. Nobody else can marry my wife, or it could be I don't want anybody else to have this treasure that I worked so hard for.
Or house.
I built this house with my bare hands, and nobody else is going to live in this house except for me. It's that kind of like
mentality,
self-righteousness,
an attachment to the material. Which is all destined to decay. It's all temporary.
Yeah,
right?
it's.
We never got to ask. I want to finish on the rest of the equipment, and then we'll go off and do another video. But I still have to, and I know a lot of people are wondering. What made you get into this? Why? Why did you make this your life? What initially happened to you when you were younger, if anything, or what was that really big factor that made you inside say, "I want to make this my life"?
Yeah. Well,
good question, Chelsea.
As I mentioned, I was born in Asheville, North Carolina, in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and North Carolina has a very, very rich history when it comes to spooky stuff. I mean, for example, the very first English attempt at a settlement there was off the coast of North Carolina. All the settlers vanished. It's now known as the Lost Colony. No one can figure out what happened to them. Right down the road from Asheville is a place called Brown Mountain, where you have the Brown Mountain lights, these mysterious balls of multicolored light floating around, and nobody can figure out what they are. My family on both sides has been in that area for hundreds of years. And so I grew up hearing a lot of these fascinating pioneer tales and Native American stories and so on. But there was one thing in particular that happened to my family before I was born that I believe gave me just as much curiosity as anything. In the 1930s, about 1936, my grandmother was, on my mom's side, was about 13 years old. And she and her family lived way out in the country in this place called Barnardsville there in western North Carolina. And they had a nice big farmhouse. It was a big family. And for her birthday present, her family, they were kind of well off in the beginning. They eventually lost everything. But at that time, they bought her a very special gift. They bought her a camera for her birthday. And one day, her father, a man named Jack, and her older brother named Claude. Now, Claude would have been my great uncle because this is my grandmother's brother. Her father and her brother, Jack and Claude, they came back from a small game hunting trip, and she asked them to pose for a photograph. They obliged. She took a picture, and when the picture came out, it would be this great picture of these old rugged mountain men holding their squirrels and rabbits, except in the picture, Claude, her older brother, did not have a head. The head was absolutely missing. Now, they knew that was weird, but they didn't know enough about photography to understand just how bizarre it was, because I saw this photograph when I was a kid. 1 month later, Claude was sitting on the porch of the house reading a copy of his favorite publication, Western Magazine, his old gunslinger tales. This was in the middle of summer, 1936. Jack, the father, was inside the house in the kitchen, and he was fixing lunch for the two. And they were conversing through an open window. And when lunch was ready, Jack went outside to bring Claude his food. Claude's magazine is there on the porch. No Claude. Okay, now Claude was hungry. Where'd Claude go? It was time to eat. Hours go by. Where the hell did Claude go? The next day, nobody'd still seen Claude. They were out in the woods. They're looking everywhere. The authorities get involved. My great uncle, Claude Calloway, was never seen or heard from again.
Whoa.
He vanished in mid-conversation, almost as as if he'd been raptured away or spirited away in the blink of an eye. And 1 month before, his fate had been foretold in that headless photograph. Now, my family, of course, this was a huge tragedy for my family. They never got over it. And when I became an adult, I went to Barnardsville and I interviewed every elderly person I could find, and they all gave me the same version of the events. I hired a forensic historian named Vance Pollock to follow the paper trail of my Uncle Claude, employment records, census records. All of it ended on that day. And that, at an early age, knowing that happened to my family, opened my mind to the reality of these strange phenomena.
Yeah.
And made me even more curious. I took it seriously, and I wanted to know, how do we explain these things? How much more is there to be explained? And so I started going out and investigating things, and I wrote a book when I was 14 that was published when I was 15. And because of that, the big newspaper in the region, gave me a job writing articles when I was 15. Couldn't even drive.
Cool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My mom and dad would drive me to places, and that led to me writing more and more about these stories and mysteries, and then getting out there and exploring, and then finally having my own experiences, which drove me even more. And now all these years later, it's snowballed into so many fantastic directions, and it's a wonderful time to be alive and to be able to communicate and exchange information with people all over the world, and to have this miniature technology that's affordable now that used to be so expensive you couldn't imagine owning it. I mean, something like this would have cost you $30,000 about 10 years ago.
No shit.
And what is that?
This is the thermal camera I was just using.
Oh,
What is that worth now?
Oh, probably about $250.
Wow.
That's how dramatically costs have changed.
I mean, look at the iPhone. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like this was 900 tools in one. 10 years ago, did you get all this stuff would have been $100,000 or more.
And that's one of the reasons a lot of these UFOs are being seen by military now, is because they've upgraded their equipment.
So learning this family story when you were a child made you so interested. It was that one thing that you just...
It was almost like the hunger to find out what the hell happened.
That was your inciting incident.
I would say
for the story of your life.
Because I knew that it was real.
Yeah.
Because I knew that happened to my family.
I wonder what happened to Claude. Like, what the hell?
Were you always a very curious person up until that point?
I was always really interested in science and exploration.
Not up until that point. I meant prior to that. You were always a curious person that this just piqued your interest so much that it became like almost like a life. Yeah,
it was a perfect fit for me. But also, I think because I come from a lot of the European settlers, and they say there are more people of... for example, Scottish descent in Western North Carolina than there are in Scotland. Those people were storytellers, and they loved... I mean, Halloween, the way we celebrate it, really originated in Ireland. Mm-hmm. So the Scots-Irish and the people from the British Isles and all that, they really got into the spooky stories in that traditional Halloween way and brought that with them over to North Carolina and Virginia, and that has expanded all the way up, especially through New England. You get Salem, Massachusetts, and all the way up to New York, and so it's like around here, people go out and they have a party and they have some fun, but there's a whole different level of cultural richness around storytelling and spooky things on the East Coast.
I love that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so, therefore, I think it's that combination. I've always been interested in stories and storytelling. I'm very curious. And I also, I guess I just have an open mind. I mean, I realize that humans are only capable of knowing so much.
Yeah.
And if you're going to explore something, you may as well explore the unknown. Otherwise, why do you need to explore it, right? Mm-hmm. What's the point?
To me, I'm only interested in having relationships and friendships with people like yourself in this planet. As soon as I start talking about stuff and someone goes, "Oh, I don't believe in that shit," there's no... It's not even a judgment on my mind, but I go, I don't want to spend my time on Earth with someone... I think of them as just a concrete wall. I'm like, nah, that's boring. That's a boring person. Like, what did you come here to just eat sandwiches and wait around to die? Like, what? Like, I have an excitement. Like, what is that? What's going on? That's a weird thing I saw in the comic show. What is that? Does anybody know? Let's talk to other people. Like, I have
what
that
is
same
that?
thirst.
Is that fear? Or just monotony? Is that the right word?
What's your question?
Just like bored. Like, what is it that makes someone
closed off?
Like, just curious. And some people just don't. They're like, nah, I don't care. I just like, what?
Yeah,
they're just so happy with like a simple life.
Yeah. Well, people wonder about what is the meaning of life. And I think that I've talked to a lot of really intelligent people. I've interviewed a man who walked on the moon. I've talked to Nobel Award winners and people like that. And I think what you gather is that most of your really smart people, they say it's to learn.
Experience.
This is a big classroom. That's what life is.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's a big classroom. And if you're not learning, well, then you're going to have to keep coming back here until you learn something.
I feel that in my heart when you just said that.
Yeah.
I think that to be true.
Yeah, and so it's like you can use the carrot or the stick. You can get a rabbit from here to Kalamazoo by using a carrot or a stick. Take your pick. Do you want to keep going through this suffering life over and over until you finally get
Figure
the
it
picture
out?
that you're not supposed to be an asshole anymore?
I think that's the main... You're not supposed to be an ass. Be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you follow the carrot, that's what I'm talking about. The universe will give you opportunities. It will speak to you. It doesn't speak English, you know what I'm saying? It's events and synchronicities and connections that come together that will guide you. And if something feels good, it makes you feel stronger and healthier and relaxed and expanded. But if it feels bad, you'll tense up and you'll feel withdrawn, okay? It's like being an amoeba. It either expands or it contracts based upon how salty the water is. Is it too salty or is it not salty? So follow those things that make you feel relaxed and warm and good. And if you do that, they will lead you to the lessons. And every time you get a lesson, it'll make you a happier, better person. And then finally, when you finish this life, you can very happily go on to the next experience.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a perfect ending point for our fans.
And then we're going to make an additional video that you can find on,
on our YouTube
and stuff.
YouTube.com/Steven Randolph.
And Chelsea Skidmore is mine. We had you had some dates. I think you're going to a conference.
Are you approachable if they see you?
Absolutely.
Talk to anybody?
Absolutely. Especially at a paranormal conference, it's more like a big, powwow. Everybody just comes up and talks to everybody.
That's cool.
And so, I'm going to be a speaker at the Chicago Ghost Conference, which is October 18th through the 20th of 2019. And it's as big and it's the best there is, the Chicago Ghost Conference. I'm going to be delivering a program called This Is Your Afterlife.
Ooh.
Creepy.
I like that. That's cool. Very cool.
Very cool.
And also, if you're going to be in the Vegas area, please check out the Creepy Vegas Ghost and UFO Show. We do it every Saturday. And if you want to see some of the best footage out there of ghosts and UFOs, and we have haunted objects that you can touch. We have some debris from Roswell that you get to hold. We've got a lot of cool, it's a very interactive stuff. We call it 60 Fun Paranormal Minutes in a Bar, and it only costs $19.95. And if you can find a better deal than that in Las Vegas, you tell me about it, okay?
Yeah.
So
where is that at?
It's at the Millennium Fandom, which is this really cool cosplay pop culture bar it's right there in downtown Vegas. It's a very nice place. And so creepyvegas.com is the place to go to get tickets, and come see me there.
One last question. We won't make it too long because I know we're time sensitive here, but like in Vegas, I just thought about all the guys that were whacked at the beginning of Vegas. All the bodies are buried in the sand. Is there a lot of ghostly, maybe ex-mafia ghostly entities out in those desert sands that were buried out there?
Yeah, they call them holes on the strip is what they call them. And there are tons of those. In fact, most of those guys just sort of vanished, you know what I mean? Like, because people would get away with murder back then.
Yeah, everybody's getting whacked, right?
And to be honest with you, I created the Creepy Vegas Ghost and UFO Show, and the host of it is a local that I picked named Nick Weird. But when I was creating the content, I had to be very careful because there were some of those gangsters that got killed that to this day, if you talk about them in a way that their families don't like, you'll end up in a hole in the desert.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there are certain stories that I could tell that I don't even touch. I'm like, okay, I'm not going there because I don't want to piss off these people.
Wow.
So to this day, yeah, that persists.
Interesting. Yeah, you don't mess with those people. Can I just give my sign off real quick?
Yes.
You guys, thank you so much for listening to this co-episode of So Deep in the Chelsea Skidmore Show. Find me as always at Instagram at Steven Randolph 2 on Twitter, Instagram, and then my YouTube is Steven Randolph our YouTube /Steven Randolph. Please rate and review the podcast on iTunes. You guys, I'll be on Jeremiah Watkins' podcast coming up this week, and going to be on a ton more. See me around. I'll be with Chelsea opening up for Eric Griffin in La Jolla this coming weekend. So if you're down in San Diego, come say hi. I'll also be in San Francisco at Cobb with Cobb's with Josh Wolf and Kyle Anderson out there. So if you're fans and friends in San Francisco, come and say what's up. Come to the show. Would love to hang.
And thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of the Chelsea Skidmore Show. It was a co-episode with Steven Randolph on his podcast, So Deep. Please check out my podcast on iTunes, rate, subscribe, and review. And as well, I'm on Instagram at Chelsea Skidmore, Twitter, Skidmore Chelsea, and my YouTube, just search Chelsea Skidmore. And I will be in La Jolla opening for Eric Griffin on October 18th through 20th with Steven.
5 shows.
5 shows. So come check us out and look for our other video with Joshua playing with his equipment.
Yeah, and Joshua, thank you so much for coming out. This is
Thank you so
time
much,
when we've been
Joshua.
going like 2.5 hours. This could be a 7-hour. I have so many questions still.
And I'm ready to get into some more equipment stuff. So look for that video as well. And
We're gonna
check
go have
out
some more
Joshua
fun.
and his website. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Awesome.
Hey, thank you guys. It's been a pleasure, really.
Yeah, now let's get into the fun shit.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye.